Welcome to the Positive Reinforcement Podcast. We don't have any intro tunes or anything. I don't really know what I'm doing yet, so I haven't really reached out to an audio guy or anything that can actually make some intro tunes. So this is just me. This is just what it's going to be, okay? There's not going to be any drum and bass, any hip-hop, nice beats or anything. Yet anyway, because I haven't really figured stuff out. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. I'm just here talking in a closet with a new mic I received yesterday, and I don't really know what I'm doing. So, welcome to the Positive Reinforcement Podcast with your host, Jonathan, Reinforce Larson, of course. Do I really have to say that? Like, do I have to introduce myself as the host of the podcast? It's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Yeah, no, but... Yeah, but do you think, like, Bill Simmons says, welcome to the Bill Simmons podcast with your host, Bill Simmons? Like, you get it, right? Yeah. What do you mean, you listeners? Like, if you tune in to an Overwatch League podcast, surely you know who I am, right? Oh. Yeah, but, okay, fine, whatever, yeah. The Positive Reinforcement Podcast with your host, Jonathan, Reinforce Larson. Welcome, everyone, welcome. In this podcast, I'm mainly going to talk about the Overwatch League, maybe some contenders. Actually, I probably have to talk about contenders, given the fact that there's been so many contenders players that just got promoted to the Overwatch League and decided to just destroy some Overwatch League teams. So maybe contenders is a bit more relevant than people actually think. We'll have to see. We'll have to figure it out. We'll have to delve deeper on the Positive Reinforcement Podcast. So maybe we'll bring in some guests as well. I haven't really figured stuff out. I've already told you. I haven't really figured it out. Maybe we'll bring in some guests. I know Matt Morello loves to give his insights, his analysis on things. And he lives like in the same apartment complex as me. So maybe we'll bring Matt Morello in sometime. Maybe we'll bring Bren in. Maybe Bren will make a guest appearance later on in this podcast. Because I've recorded this podcast for like 3 times now. Because it's just been tragic. You know, I'm starting out. I'm trying to figure it out. So I think I have to give it a few test runs before I actually make the official first episode. And so Bren has heard me make the same joke probably like 3 times. He's like losing his mind in the kitchen, going to start using a blender sometime throughout this podcast because he's on a dirty bulk or something. I don't really get it. He's eating a lot of peanuts that he blends or something. He might pop in and just be like, Johnny, why are you talking to yourself in a closet? I don't really get it. Whatever. No ads either. As you probably have noticed, it is my first episode. I don't even have a viewer count. I don't know how many people watched. I got like 600 likes on Twitter when I asked for questions. Probably like 150 questions. Half of them were just like, what does Houston Outlaws need to do better? So I feel like that's a pretty good vibe, you know? Like I got a good feeling about how many listeners will get on this podcast. So maybe we'll have ads in the future. But not for now. Like if you need a code for, I don't know, Get Roman or something, you have to go to the Bill Simmons podcast. He'll hit you up if you have a problem with that ED. I can't help you out. Use code Bill or something. I can't help you. Anyway, moving along. Let's get into it. How do we actually get into it? I don't have any instruments or any segue tunes or anything, so I'll just use my USB microphone box I received yesterday, and there you go. That's my intro to the schedule. Welcome to now we're doing the schedule stuff, right? So we're going to take a look at the Overwatch League schedule, and I'm going to analyze my favorite matchups throughout the week, give some insights. There's a lot of matchups here that I don't really find interesting and I don't really want to talk about, so I'm not going to talk about those. Maybe if you have a question, you can tweet at me, at Reinforce. Use the hashtag AskReinforce. And you can ask about your favorite bottom tier teams. Because I don't really want to talk about them unless it's a fantastic matchup. So, go ahead and do that if you're a fan of the Chengdu Hunters or Florida Mayhem. But for now, we're sticking to the very best matchups. To the most even matchups. So starting off, I got an intro today or something. Thursday, February 21st. I put on a British accent there. I don't know why. Washington Justice takes on London Spitfire at 4 p.m. PST. Second match is going to be Philadelphia Fusion versus Florida Mayhem. Scheduled for 5:30 p.m. PST. Probably be like 6 p.m. So take your time. Go take your dog for a walk or something. Guangzhou Charge. Yeah. That's going to be a reoccurring thing. Okay, deal with it. You get insights. You have to trade with some poor accent. It's just going to happen. Guangzhou Charge takes on the Dallas Fuel. And then finally Seoul Dynasty takes on Chengdu Hunters. That is our Thursday matches. That's what it's looking like. So among these 4 matches, I've picked Guangzhou Charge versus Dallas Fuel. Guangzhou Charge comes into this series 0-1 from week 1. They lost to Chengdu Hunters in a map 5er. Pretty close game. Pretty fun game, honestly. And meanwhile, Dallas Fuel with a 1-1 record, featuring a loss to the San Francisco Shock, as expected. Honestly, like, if you lost to San Francisco Shock and you're a Dallas Fuel fan, you have no reason to be upset, because this San Francisco Shock team looks so good and is so stacked. And they also ended up beating the Seoul Dynasty, which some people actually were caught by surprise. I don't know why, really. This is going to be my match of the day on Thursday. I think this can be a really fun one, considering that Guangzhou Charge, they play a lot of interesting comps versus Chengdu. And sure, it was because Chengdu, they don't play the GOATS meta. They don't play your typical lineups. I get it, right? I get it. But still, they showed some flexibility. And maybe that will be a reoccurring thing. Hotbound the Tracer was incredible to watch. And sure, again, the stats don't really tell the full story because they played versus a Chengdu team. But Hotbound was the most impressive Tracer statistically from last week. And some people will be like, oh, that doesn't make sense. They played versus Chengdu Hunters that played a triple DPS comp. I was like, yeah, sure. But still, he's a Diva player, and he played some Tracer. And I think that was really interesting to watch. So I'm hoping that maybe he'll put it out again versus Dallas Fuel, because they looked good on it. Meanwhile, the Dallas Fuel, they impressed with their Sombra play versus Seoul Dynasty. aKm looked really good in that match, actually. He was really good. Like, he probably was, I'm not going to say the best player on Fuel. I'm going to say the second best player. Anko is always that guy who's performing in the backline of every team he's ever played against, and then he just watches his team run in and die. So Anko is the best player on Dallas Fuel, in my opinion. But aKm, he played really well, and I think he was the second best player on Dallas Fuel in that Seoul win. So I'm really looking forward to see what they bring out versus Guangzhou Charge here. If they're going to continue playing the Sombra, that might open up Guangzhou Charge to play more Ana for their flex support Shu, who really impressed us, honestly, with his Senyala and Ana play. Again, #1 in damage done on both heroes from week 1. And yes, it was versus Chengdu Hunters that played some wacky compositions, but still, I think there's a lot of players on Guangzhou Charge that are really interesting to follow. Happy on the Widowmaker, Hotbound, the Tracer, and Shu on that Senyala and Ana role. So I think this is going to be a great matchup. I do think that Dallas Fuel are going to end up winning it in the end. I think they are the superior team, but I'm hoping it gets close. I'm hoping this is a map 5er, but for prediction's sake, I gotta go with Dallas Fuel 3-1 over the Guangzhou Charge. Moving along, Friday, February 22nd. Again, what's with the British accent? Like, Sideshow and Bren are really bad influences on me. I don't really get it. For our 4 p.m. PST match, we have Atlanta Reign versus Toronto Defiant, followed by New York Excelsior taking on the Los Angeles Valiant. Shanghai Dragons goes up against the Boston Uprising. Great matchup, by the way. Really good matchup. And Houston Outlaws against the Hangzhou Spark. So actually, this was pretty close to me. New York Excelsior versus Los Angeles Valiant is honestly like the best matchup of the day. It's the most high-quality matchup of the day. But I also think that Shanghai Dragons versus Boston Uprising could be a barn burner, to borrow some of Mitch Uber-Leslie's dictionary. So let me just talk about the Shanghai Dragons Boston matchup, for starters anyway. Because obviously Shanghai Dragons, they're 0-42. They have a fresh core. They are looking pretty good, honestly. I think this is a team you have to sort of be wary of when you go up against them. Obviously, they had troubles in week 1 with Jung Jin playing the Reinhardt, filling in because they didn't have any main tank. Gamsu came in late, didn't really have any practice time. And so I think it was just a difficult week for the Shanghai Dragons. But overall, the individual skill on this roster, we should expect them to perform pretty admirably throughout the season. But they have to get that first win. Do I think they're going to beat Boston Uprising in this matchup? No. No, I don't think they will. I think Boston Uprising takes this one. Honestly, if you're not bullish on Boston Uprising after week 1, what are you even thinking about? Like, where's your analysis at? Because Boston Uprising, they're doing the exact same thing as last year. They get underrated, they pick up all these random people from the ladder that are super good, and then they just surprise everyone and show off. Like, sure, they lost to the New York Excelsior in a 2-1 defeat, but that was so close versus one of the best teams in the league. And then you also go on to win. Who did they beat? I should have looked this up beforehand. They went on to win one game as well, with Fusions leading the way. Week 1 results. Houston Outlaws, of course, in that map 5er, which is not the most impressive result, honestly, because Houston Outlaws are looking questionable, to say the least. But now they have Color Hex available. Color Hex is off the suspension list, and this is such a big boon for Boston Uprising moving forward. And with Fusions or aKm leading the way, I don't really care. I don't really care who is the main tank for Boston Uprising. This is such a team with such great potential. Everyone's sort of underrating them once again. This is play-in potential, at least. Honestly, I would not be surprised to just see Boston Uprising just go on for a playoff run again. They're looking that good, and I'm not underestimating Huck any longer. They're going to beat the Shanghai Dragons in a 3-1 victory. Shanghai Dragons DM will probably pop off, as we've seen he can do on the hit scan heroes, etc. He might pop off. Anyway, stay more bullish on Boston Uprising, because seriously, if you just keep underrating them, Huck is just gonna go on Twitter and giggle and have lots of fun for himself, and that's not really what you want to do. I really want to like be Huck for a day. You know, like he goes on to just putting star teams together with randoms, and then everyone underrates him, and then he wins, and he says, "I did it again. You were fools to not believe me and my scouting strategies." That must be such a good feeling to just have all of Reddit be pretty pissed at you for being great at what you do. Anyway, let's talk about the real matchup on February 22nd. The New York Excelsior takes on the Los Angeles Valiant. Do I think this is going to be as good of a matchup as people think? No. Valiant, they beat New York Excelsior in the Stage 4 finals, but it's not the same team. It's not even remotely the same team, especially in this GOATS meta. They moved over Kariv to the DPS role. Isayaki is filling his shoes pretty good though. I should be careful with what I'm saying here, given that I'm never going to go back and edit this podcast and take back my statements. But I've already said that Valiant are going to be dog shit in this match, so I might as well just go on with it. Anyway, New York Excelsior looking by far to be the better team in this matchup. They're just so consistent, aren't they? Like, sure, they beat Boston Uprising narrowly 2-1, and then they went on to lose a map to Washington Justice. But still, like, there's so much talent on this roster, and their ultimate usage is so good. Their teamwork is always on point. So you can't really underestimate them either. I think the what's the word I'm looking for? Like, the hype from Season 1 is still, like, carrying on. They're, like, low-key sandbagging already, because they're like, well, we better give these teams a chance, yeah, before we start winning all the time. So I think they look a bit worse match-wise, you know, looking at past matchups than they actually are. I think they're going to just stomp the Valiant in this matchup. I think they might just win 4-0 just for the fun of it. They'll just be like, ha, no one surprised us 4-0ing the Los Angeles Valiant, because I just think they're the better team overall. It is noteworthy, saying though, for the sake of Valiant, that Isayaki is so good, as I earlier described, and Fate did struggle versus Hangzhou Spark, mainly because he opted for the Winston so many times at the start of games, and as such they lost like some ultimate management because he was forced to swap back to the Reinhardt versus Reinhardt duel. Space came in super clutch, honestly, at some points last week, and I expect him to do the same this week. But then it's like, oh, Space is doing really well, but he's also up against Meko, who's a fantastic D.Va player himself. So it's not really like Valiant have like an, you know, advantage going up against the New York Excelsior position-wise. And so I do think that New York Excelsior are just going to win this matchup. I'm sorry, Valiant fans. Wings in or something. I don't know. Moving on, anyway. I don't know. I don't want to keep this podcast going for too long. Anyway. Saturday, February 23rd. I got a pretty good third. We got a pretty good third in, I think. Los Angeles Gladiators goes up against the Paris Eternal for our 12 p.m. PST. Wake up early, California people. That's not really early at all. Well, we're gamers, you know. We wake up like 11 a.m., 12 p.m. You gotta be up earlier than that. Come to the arena, buy some tickets, listen to ABBA between games. That's what it's all about. Philadelphia Fusion takes on the Dallas Fuel. Vancouver Titans versus Guangzhou Charge, and Chengdu Hunters versus Florida Mayhem to end the day. What a snoozer. It might actually be good, but it's a bit of a snoozer. My game of the day is the Los Angeles Gladiators versus the Paris Eternal, of course. Los Angeles Gladiators, which comes in from week 1 following a loss to the Seoul Dynasty to kick off 2019, but also winning versus the San Francisco Shock in a bit of an upset to some. You know, I always predicted this. Sideshow got his words taken to him or something. There's a phrase there. I can't really remember. Paris up 1-0 following week 1, beating the London Spitfire 3-1 in a pretty convincing win, honestly. But it was against a London Spitfire team that have not looked really good at all on the triple tank, triple support composition. So how much can you really gauge from that? I don't know. This will be a really good matchup in my opinion, because Los Angeles Gladiators, they hold the title of Kings of Goats so far. And someone's going to be like, no, Paris Eternal is the best team in the Overwatch League. Vancouver Titans, have you heard about Runaway? No, that doesn't really work that way. Both Vancouver Titans and Paris Eternal have just played one game. They've only played one game so far this season. How can you crown a team the best team in the league when they've just played one game? It doesn't work like that. Los Angeles Gladiators, they played 2 games, and to end week 1, they beat the San Francisco Shock. And so, they hold the title of Kings of Goats. We'll just have to see if Paris Eternal can rob them of that title. Big Goose was a standout performer versus the San Francisco Shock, and I expect him to do the same. Really helping Roar out on the Reinhardt to get some positional advantage. Maybe try to lure Ben Best in, as they lured a Smurf and Super in with some big boobs. Really impressive play all around. And then on Paris Eternal, of course, we have to mention another Lucio, Cruz, who's one of my favorite players to watch now, because of course he has a bit of history in the Overwatch scenes, and I've played versus him and hung out with him many times, but now he's really in the big leagues performing. It's fun. Congratulations, Cruz. It's fun to follow you. Other players on this team, of course, soon you have to look out for him on the Zarya. Really a standout performer on Paris Eternal. But it is Ghost after all. So it's all about the teamwork, it's all about team chemistry, it's all about the ultimate combinations. And that's where Paris Eternal really have the edge, because they were in Europe, the region known for the triple tank, triple support play. And they've brought it over to the States. And we've heard many times that they are, in fact, winning a lot of scrims. Gotta get those scrimbox! Scrimbox! And so they might be a favorite going into this matchup. But Los Angeles Gladiators, I think they might actually win this matchup. I'm going with a 3-1 prediction for the Los Angeles Gladiators on the back of Sureforce Sombra, which is going to be the key in this matchup. Please play Sombra. Please don't fucking play more Zarya. Please. So, Sureforce, I believe in you. Paris Eternal did struggle versus London Spitfire in their week 1 matchup following Guard subbing in on King's Row. And London Spitfire took that map because of Guard's fantastic Sombra play. And given the fact that Sureforce is the best Sombra in the world, honestly, I think you should use that as a tool versus a Paris Eternal team that didn't look too comfortable playing against the Sombra. Cruz hid well, got some sound barriers in, that's all he has to do, but overall the team didn't really adapt that well to Guard's Sombra play, and so I'm hoping that Los Angeles Gladiators use that as a tool against Paris and get a 3-1 victory on Saturday. Moving on to Sunday, February 24th. Hangzhou Spark takes on the London Spitfire. New York Excelsior versus the Houston Outlaws. Toronto Defiant versus the Los Angeles Valiant. And finally, Vancouver Titans versus San Francisco Shock. I want to spend some time talking about Hangzhou Spark versus London Spitfire, because this could be an extremely fun matchup. A lot of people are speculating that we might see a lot of DPS play, considering that London Spitfire hasn't really looked that comfortable on the tank compositions. And we also saw some DPS play from Hangzhou Spark, where God's Plea opted for the Sombra. And Buzzy, however he wants that pronounced. Look, Buzzy, if you don't like my pronunciation of your name, you'll have to tweet at me, at Reinforce, and tell me to change it. But until then, your name is Buzzy. This might be a really good matchup. We might see some DPS play. That's what people are speculating. But I say, no, that's not going to happen. Hangzhou Spark are going to pull out a lot of Winston Goats, with Guangzhou leading the way to shut down London Spitfire's DPS comps, which in turn will force the London Spitfire to either mirror with Gesture on the Winston or swap to a true Reinhardt Goats composition. And then I think that Hangzhou Spark will eventually take that matchup, because then you just put no smite or you put Guangzhou on the Reinhardt, you play the mirror versus London Spitfire, and you win, because London Spitfire are looking garbage, quite frankly, on this triple tank composition. And I think it's going to be a win for Hangzhou Spark. 3-1. They haven't really won convincingly in any of their previous matchups, and so I don't think it's going to be a 4-0 stomp or anything, but Hangzhou Spark will take it 3-1 after some easy composition swaps. Which leads us to the match of the week. I'm trying to borrow that from Mina Kimes or something. As I said, I don't have any intros or like segues or anything. So what Mina Kimes did on her podcast during the NFL playoffs was that she just used her deep, powerful voice to segue between segments and stuff. So I'm sort of borrowing that concept, but because I'm actually a dude and I have a bit of a deeper, lower, more bass vocal cord or whatever, I can like properly go full emo metal kind of voice as I segue. I'm not gonna listen back to the podcast and see if that was any good, but you get it. Match of the week is going to be Vancouver Titans versus San Francisco Shock. Easily the best matchup of the week. This is two top teams going against each other. Both teams are very proficient at the GOATS composition, the triple tank, triple support, but also they have some DPS players up their sleeve. They have some viable compositions. Stitch proved in week 1 that he was a fantastic McCree for the Vancouver Titans, and he can pull that out if required. Maybe some Widowmaker. Haxal with the Genji on Dorado as well. And San Francisco Shock, pretty non-self-explanatory. They have Rascal, Striker, Architect, Sinatra, and Baby Bay. They can just play pretty much whatever they want. How do we think this match is going to go? Busan, Kings Row, Volskaya Industries, Route 66. A lot of GOATS maps, after all. I doubt we'll see a lot of DPS play on Volskaya Industries. We might see some first point attacks, similar to what London Spitfire pulled out in week 1. Busan might actually see some DPS play as well, but I think both teams would rather just opt for a Winston GOATS composition to try to counter those DPS picks, if so. So I feel like it's going to be tanks in this matchup predominantly, which favors the Vancouver Titans, honestly. But I do expect Krusty to have some tricks up his sleeve, try to actually win this matchup. I think that San Francisco Shock are going to use all their tools in their roster to try to beat Vancouver Titans in this matchup. And I think that gives them the final leg up, and I think that makes them the favorites. I think this is a match that has a lot of... that is very heated. It has a lot of... what's the word I'm looking for? This is why you should never do a podcast with a Swedish man. There's a lot on the line here. It's essentially what I'm trying to say. Vancouver Titans joining the Overwatch League after not being part of it in Season 1. And they have a lot of strong feelings about them. They should have like been here in the first place. They should have been in Overwatch League Season 1. But didn't do that. Instead, they went and dominated in Korean contenders. So I think they have something to prove here versus a favorite in San Francisco Shock. But at the same time, I think San Francisco Shock, they have a roster with too many young people, with too much money, and that kind of cockiness is just going to make them use all their tools to try and win this matchup. And I think San Francisco Shock is going to beat Vancouver Titans. Will we see map 5? I certainly hope so. Yeah, I think we might go all the way. Are we predicting a map 5? Or are we going all the way? Yeah, we're going all the way. We're going to map 5. San Francisco Shock to take it in 5 maps. player of the match, brought to you by Rode microphones or something, will be Architect, due to his flexibility. Might play some fun DPS characters, might see some more Ana, or might just stick to their Brigade. Going to be a great one. Going to be a great match of the week. That's a possibility. If you're like the head of a company, if you're some marketing manager or whatever, hit me up. I'll get sponsored by the most random things. If you sell big socks on Amazon, something that I made use of as of very recent, just hit me up and I'll promote your sock company for match of the week. Great, love it. So that was pretty much all the matchups, but we're not done yet. We're not done. It's not over. We got a Q&A segment, because people love to ask me questions. I think I got like 150 replies or something on my tweet where I asked for questions. And as I said, half of them were probably about Houston Outlaws, but we're not really going to do that. I'm sorry. Maybe more Houston Outlaws next week. So let's take some questions, shall we? From that one Kappa. And if you want to ask questions, by the way, use the hashtag #AskReinforce on Twitter and tag me @Reinforce. And maybe I'll take your question for any future Q&A editions. From that one Kappa, what would your ideal meta look like? Now this is a very interesting question, because wishful thinking, everything is viable. Every hero should have seen at least 2 maps play per series, etc. But that's not really the case. I just want to see a lot of Genji and a lot of Widowmaker, honestly. That's all I care about. And that doesn't really make sense, because Genji counters Widowmaker. So like, what is the idea there? How can you have Widowmaker and Genji viable at the same time? Doesn't really work, does it? But I'd love to see more Genji and Widowmaker. And maybe some Reinhardt Zarya comps. But D.Va has been so good for so long. I really miss actually Winston dive with Lucios. That's what we saw at the start of competitive Overwatch for so long. And it was so much fun because the pace was so high. We saw some great dive with Lucio. But then in Season 1 of the Overwatch League, that kind of shifted to a more Mercy Zenyatta meta. And it was so slow and agonizing to watch. It was all about the Widowmaker. So I feel like that Winston play in Season 1 didn't really see its full potential in terms of fun metas to watch. And so I'm going for some Winston dive with Lucio. I've had enough of Reinhardt, contrary to popular belief. Taking another question from Keith Worley6. Were Dallas improving last week, or did Seoul underperform? Now this is an interesting question. Dallas certainly improved. When they went up against the Seoul Dynasty, they had some great disengages, played some fun Sombra, and as I said, disengaged because they played the Zenyatta. Seoul Dynasty opted for the Ana play, of course, which meant that Dallas Fuel, they always wanted to be on the disengage and sort of back off because they played the Zenyatta, and so they know they're going to win that fight over time using the Discord Orb. And we really saw some great disengages, some great hacks from aKm, which won them that matchup, and Seoul didn't really get as much value as they would have liked from Riji Hong's Ana play in that matchup. But even despite that, I do think that Seoul did underperform in that matchup quite heavily. I did a VOD review with Sideshow on this matchup specifically, and honestly, some of those Fleta Zarya barriers onto Fisher, god damn! Those were so bad. That was honestly quite shocking to watch. I think Fleta played brilliantly that series initially. Like, he did so much damage. He has some pretty good grabs. But his Zarya barriers, man. Oof! They were quite awful. And I didn't expect that from Fleta. I thought he was going to build the narrative of the faker of Overwatch, right? Not in terms of winning all the titles and everything, but being a cerebral player that's proficient on every hero, sort of like the Terminator of the Overwatch League. And then I saw his Zarya barriers, and I was like, what is this guy doing in game? Like, is this guy even top 500? I don't even know if Fisher called for those, but if Fisher called for those Zarya barriers, like, his value really went down the drain for me. That was some horrible Zarya Reinhardt play, and really made me quite upset. So I do think that Seoul underperformed. Because they have the talent, right? Mitchell proved that he was one of the better Sombras in the league with his play versus the Dallas Fuel. He was ranked highest in ultimate efficiency, I think. Was he ranked highest? I don't know. He EMP'd a lot of people anyway. And he was up there, either second or first, I think, on EMP efficiency in week 1. So Mitchell really stood out as a player to keep an eye on. Jexay is one of my personal favorites, joining the Seoul Dynasty following a successful career, I guess we have to say. Wasn't that successful, but it was borderline successful. They were hyped anyway. Playing main support for Element Mystic. Ri Jae-hong, of course, who played a fantastic Ana, had some questionable transcendences. Yeah, that was another thing as well. Like, by God, Ri Jae-hong, some of your transcendences, mate. Like, just give up. Just when you see the enemy team use a grab, pop transcendence. If they're not using grab, don't use it. Oof. That was frustrating to watch. But I do think Seoul has some talent and some potential, some future potential. But they really underperformed against Dallas. That was quite shocking to watch, honestly. Especially after they beat Gladiators just prior in week 1. From Thickest Crema. How is Boston's scouting far more superior to any other OWL teams? Well, I think this is simply... The answer is simply they just put in more time, honestly. I think they're the most committed to actually finding all of these golden nuggets or whatever the phrase is. Finding all of these new, inexperienced players on the ladder that haven't really seen any competitive play before. I think they just put in more time, put in more effort, and as such, they pick up these unknown players that just keep on performing. You remember all of these Google documents where, like, San Francisco Shock, I remember, maybe some other teams that were like, oh, here, you can submit an application to join our team. Apply now. It was just a bunch of people who were like, I'm 4100 SR. I played in Overwatch Open Division with a 5-5 record with my boys in Hawaii Pizza. And I really think I can make an impact on San Francisco Shock. And San Francisco Shock were just like, what are you on about, mate? Like, there's no way we're going to even give you a tryout. But then you look at a team like Boston Uprising, and they just trialed everyone. Like, literally everyone that wanted to could have trialed for the Boston Uprising. It was that incredible. I saw some of those documents, hashtag leaks, and I mean, they trialed like 150, 200 players, surely, that just applied from the ladder. I saw some of these players, and I woke up and I think like, Huck, why are you trialing a Hammond main? What's your idea here? Like, why are you trialing European Hammond mains and Symmetra mains? Do you know something I don't? Should we talk to Jeff Kaplan about this? And because they trialed so many players, I mean, Boston Uprising, they just see the results. They pick up all of these unknown players because they put the time in to give them a shot at the roster. So it's really just about their coaching philosophy and their scouting philosophy and how much time they put in. So really impressed by the Boston Uprising in the offseason, and well deserved, honestly, picking up all of these talented players that we haven't really heard about prior. And I think they're going to actually do quite great this season. Let's take a question from Instagram. We have Lando S916, who asks, who do you think is the most underrated player in the league? And typically, right, I would say, who would I say, actually? This is a bit of a hard question. If it was last year, it was just like 12 teams, so I could have just thought about it for like 2 minutes, and I would have been able to tell you an answer. But now we have like 200 players, there's 20 teams, and so I have to actually think about it for a bit. God, I need to be better preparing for podcasts. Who is the most underrated player in the league? I'm going to go with EQO on this one, actually. I'm going to go with EQO from the Philadelphia Fusion. Everyone knows him to be good. Like, it's not like everyone thinks he's garbage or anything. There's just no one talks about him because he's on a stacked team with an insane roster. People prefer to talk about Poco, his insane diva play, diva bombs, great matrix, Zarya play, pretty good at times. You have Neptuno, who's the Deadliest Mercy in the league, great shot calling, fun Lucio, etc. And then you have Carpe, and he's just like one borderline league MVP. And EQO is just sat there like, guys, I'm the flex player. I'm the one enabling us to play all of these viable compositions. And I don't get any credit. Like, talk about me. Like, EQO's Hanzo in last season's playoffs was actually fantastic, apart from the grand final. But his Hanzo was a big part to Philadelphia Fusion's success. And so you have to give EQO more credit than he is currently getting. And so I think that makes him the most underrated player in the league. And I'd love to see him get praised more. But it is a bit hard because he's stuck on Brigitte now in the triple tank, triple support meta. But I love seeing him, especially on Genji, Hanzo, Pharah, all of those picks. So I hope we see more of that in Overwatch League 2019. Finally, our last question comes from Matt Morello. If you don't know him, that's Mr. X on the broadcast, the guy who fills in for Mitch Leslie when Mitch Leslie is tired of talking. Matt Morello asks, what's your favorite type of bread? And I had to give this question some time. I had to think about this for a while. This was a hard question because there's lots of bread that's good. You know, it's the cheese garlic bread or whatever it is you get on Subway when you get a nice sandwich. Love that. That's really good. There's the breadsticks from that famous American chain. I can't even remember what it's called. How can I not remember what the chain is called when I was going to make a joke on the podcast? It's not Panera. Panera's great. It's the one. The one that serves you a bunch of spaghetti. Okay, whatever. Free breadsticks. You get it. But honestly, I think my favorite type of bread is like a French bread roll or something. When I grew up, my mom would always buy me this bread on Saturdays and Sundays because it'd be like, oh, we're celebrating a day off or something. I can go buy freshly baked bread and I don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning. So my mom would go and buy this freshly baked French bread roll, and it was quite honestly amazing. It's not baguettes. It's not baguettes. Like, what are you guys thinking? Like, I don't know what a baguette is. Come on, listeners. Come on, guys and girls. No, it was like it was a bread roll. It's kind of soft. It doesn't have any crunch to it. You open it up and it's just lovely texture. Very soft. You put some cheese in there. You put some salami in there. And it's just an amazing time eating that. I love that. I love that. Beautiful French bread rolls. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Anyway, that's going to be the end of Positive Reinforcement Episode 1 with your host, Jonathan Reinforce Larson. If you want to support the podcast, you can go to twitch.tv/reinforce, subscribe, donate, and please put in a donation that you're listening to the podcast, because that's gives me a bit of a understanding of how much people actually like the show. You can go to streamlabs.com/reinforce, I think as well, and donate. And you can also ask some questions for our future Q&A. Hashtag #AskReinforce. Tag @Reinforce on Twitter. And also follow my Instagram, because that motivates me to post more pictures. I need to do that. I need to post more pictures in the future. So if you follow me, you might be the key follower in making me use Instagram more. So follow me on Instagram @ReinforceOwl. And I think that's the end of it. Is that the end? Are we done? Is that the end of episode 1? Yeah? I don't have any sponsor shoutouts, yeah? Yeah, good. Okay. Alright, let's end it. We're out. 40 minutes. That was pretty good. Yeah. Have a good one. And I'll see you next time on Positive Reinforcements. Maybe with treats this time.